Now, the reason why I didn't immediately jump the gun and, go forth and say, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, is because I wanted to take the time to feel into the energy to see what this shift truly holds for all of us. Because you can learn a lot about a transit just by paying attention to how it begins. What unfolds tends to be an iteration of the original starting point, as it were. Now, I know some of this video is likely to be shared often because it's one of those videos that does get shared around, especially when I talk about large planetary transits into new signs. And for those of you who are new to me, it is okay if you believe in 13 sign astrology. It's okay if you practice the sidereal system and for you things are different. I do what I do. And all of us need to do what feels and what works right. Oh, what feels and rather what works best. And, with that, we can segue into the topic of Saturn in the sign of Pisces. Now, Saturn in Aquarius has taught us a lot. It has taught me a lot, and it has been definitely the hardest 3 years of my life. And I think a lot of people feel exactly the same way because we've been very pushed. We've been challenged. The world has seen a extraordinary phase in great digitization. We are looking at AI chatbots. We are looking at how social media has transformed and had another mini revolution. We're looking at how our ideas of the collective have transformed, and now it's time to be doing something different. So one of the things, and I said this years ago, and for those of you interested in my original writings, you can go to my website, theskypriestess.com, and you can go and look up stuff that I've been saying for years. Whilst we are moving towards the age of Aquarius, a lot of people tend to confuse Aquarius and Pisces. So they kind of project Aquarian, rather they project Piscean energies onto the idea of Aquarius, because if you were to look at the astrology of the time when this really got popular in popular culture and so on and so forth, started out as a fringe. Now a lot of people know about it, I would say, maybe not the mainstream, but it started out at a time where we had a very, very strong Neptunian and Pisces influence in the skies. So a lot of people conflate these two signs, even though they are remarkably different. Now, that's why I'm talking about Saturn in Aquarius first, and then segueing into Saturn into Pisces. Aquarius is it is the energy of the mind, it is the energy that links to the astral plane, whereas Pisces is a lot more intuitive. Yes, it does go very, very deep into emotional waters, but the quality or the type of way in which it accesses what we call psychic abilities is very different from what you find with Aquarius. Aquarius will rely on logic and reason to find that intuitive leap, but Pisces relies on feeling, on clairsentience, clairaudience, simply just being and knowing. They are very, very different in nature and character. So with this Saturn in Pisces transit, what we can expect is a collective need to look at the boundaries, the lessons, the strength, the discipline that we need to develop vis-a-vis our spiritual practices and our spiritual understanding, our relationship with karma, our relationship with God, goddess, divinity, call it what you want, great spirit, creator, creatrix, there's so many names out there you can use. But this is an extraordinarily important time for all of us as a collective to be looking at this question. What is our relationship with spirit and how do we find it? Now, because of, capitalism, spirituality and wellness are their own big booming industries. And I'm not going to, sit here and call out people left, right, and center. But what I can tell you is this. If you are looking for answers to spirit, or how to find spirit from someone else, you are already empowering someone with a position that they do not need to have in your life. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get a reading, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get assistance, but remember that whatever you take in, if you are looking for spiritual answers, if you are looking to just understand a little bit more about this world, no matter who you're talking to, whether it's me, whether it's someone else, that is always that filtered by that person's subjective view. I do my best to corroborate. I use multi-methods. I check in with people whose site I trust before I make very, very definitive statements. But even then, I am always very circumspect to say, this is what I know at this time. This is my understanding at this moment. Because in each person's journey, understanding continues to evolve. But in this transit, what I want you to remember is that you should not be handing over your connection, or rather your right to determine your connection with spirit, to anyone or anything. Yes, get readings. Yes, get facilitation if it's with people you trust. But remember that these are all perspectives. They may be right, they may be wrong. One of the hardest things being in this field for me has been to see so many people whom I cared about, so many people whom I cherished, just kind of go down a very weird path. I remember that happened to someone who I was doing, for fun, I would do readings for him. And he was someone who absolutely loved dragons. And each time I did a tarot read for him, I was like, buddy, no, something is wrong. And he would very, very, very matter-of-factly just laugh and say, no, 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 you can't be further from the truth. And that man ended up dying in his 40s, leaving behind a teenage daughter. And I knew something was wrong. He had gone down a path, his ego had caught up to whatever he was doing, and that distorted his work. And I could see it, but I'm not in a position to make that statement to anyone. And I've seen it with quite a few facilitators. And it's hard. It's very, very hard. And it's one of the reasons why I keep pushing myself. Is this right? Did I do this okay? Am I being prejudiced by my own biases? Am I believing what I want to believe? Is the opposite true? How does it feel to think about the opposite? And that's how I keep constantly checking myself. And also, I constantly keep learning. And that is one of the key skills I would recommend everyone develop, especially at this time. Rather than expecting some holy vessel to deliver you a prophecy of your future and what you're meant to be doing, say, okay, I got this perspective. How does it feel? Does this feel like it's mine? Does this feel like this is the person's own, whatever's going on with them? Does this message feel like it was for a completely different person? I need you to pause and ask yourself that, rather than just going, someone claims they're a divine vessel. Someone claims they've got guidance. I'm going to believe everything that they say. Don't do that. When people work with me, I tell them the same thing. If you think it's bullshit, tell me you think it's bullshit, and we will sit down and figure out why. So far, no one has told me that. But it's something that I hope more and more will continue to practice, because I have been through the mill looking for answers, and I have found that my ability to discern has been my saving grace. My ability to take a step back and say, wait a minute, where is this coming from? How does it feel? Does it resonate with me? And if not, why may that be the case? Start asking yourselves these questions. That's how you know. Even if you go for a good job managing their time, or did not just practice basics, psychic hygiene, you can still get something out of it when you take a step back and say, well, this is mine and this isn't. Which doesn't mean that, they should be excused for not doing their job properly. But if it does happen, remember that keeping this clear, anyone dictate terms to you, even if, they claim to be whatever, is key. Another thing that I see with Saturn in Pisces coming up, especially the way TikTok has blown up in the past few years, I see more and more people focusing on the image and not the content. I see more and more people who are using beautiful words to describe things in ways they know will entice and hook the reader. But that's the last thing you should be doing. From my personal experience, The people whom I have truly come to respect as teachers are the ones who have never felt the need to do that. Their words speak for themselves, and you will find them if you need to. You don't need to be selling yourself as a brand. You don't need to be posturing in a way to get others to notice you. You're not a peacock. Well, if you were and you're watching my video, kudos. But you don't need to be doing things to create that hook, because that then becomes work. The more you try to hook people to come to you, the more hooky your work is going to be. And that is something I hope that for the facilitators amongst you, you bear that come your way will come your way. Don't force it. Don't push it. Because with Pisces, the only way through Pisces is faith. It is not fear. It is not, trying to push it through. It is not a space of trying to jump through intellectual loopholes. It's not a space of trying to figure it out through astrology. It's not a space of trying to take shortcuts. It's a space of humility and faith. Now, for me, it has always been clear to me from day one, even though I have acted against my better judgment many times, but it has always been clear to me that the person that you really need to have faith in, first and foremost, is in yourself. And the reason I say this is not to encourage narcissism or solipsism or whatever ism you want to call it, but it is to trust that you, as the perceiver of your experiences, are present, are here, are witnessing and experiencing what you need to witness at this precise moment. And that does not justify abuse, it does not justify bad experiences, but rather it brings you back to a place of centeredness, no matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter how scary, how horrifying, how, terrifying a thing may be. But when you can have faith that you are here, if nothing else, and that you as a being are experiencing, just that awareness can ignite. And it it sounds kind of counterintuitive at first. The internet does not like me. But I was saying, no, here. You are here. And I know the most foundational statement that you can make, but it is what it is. Have faith in your own presence. Have faith in your own being. And you don't have to put a value to that. You don't have to believe you're very smart. You don't have to believe you're very beautiful. You don't have to believe you're very holy. You don't have to believe you're very sacred. The more you put onto that concept, the further away you get from simply being. And this is why I've always had a problem with affirmation. I've had a problem with them because they intellectualize. I am. That's it. Full stop. That is the most powerful affirmation that you can make. And the more you get into that space, you will ultimately realize that I is not your ego, I is not your mind, your conditioning, I is something far deeper, and that connects back with spirit. So that's how we get back to the spiritual. But you have to ask yourself, strip away the demons and illusions that have kept you comfortable. One of the hardest things for people to do. Because people build entire careers on this. People build entire lives around this. Are you willing to strip away from your own illusions so you can see who you actually are and who others are by that extension? But it has to start with the self. That kind of commitment, for me at the very least, has been what has saved me. Time. Yeah. The moment I put a little bit of my spiritual intensity into the work that I'm saying or doing, the internet kicks it. It does not like actual power. But Anyway, so as I was saying, the moment you can actually have faith in your presence, in your being, just as a statement, not good, not bad, not ugly, whatever, just have faith in your own presence. That is what shows you the way forwards. It doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you are. And that quality of being, without judgment, without some teleological narrative, without conceptualizing it into another framework of some kind, that's where you find spirit. It is honestly that simple. But it's difficult to do because one of the hardest things for people to do is to face themselves. And the further you go down the spiritual path, you will not only have to face yourself in the moment, but also, if anything is present, aspects of yourself from a different time. Whatever it is has generated a particular karmic cycle that you are on. And that cycle will clear once you are able to face yourself. Now, what is very alarming, and I've talked about voracity, the false light, before. What is very alarming is how realistic, hyper-realistic the false light can be. And that is also going to be a big test for people with Saturn in Pisces. You can go and focus on something and go and find something that gives you answers that you want, answers that make you feel good. But is that actually spirit? And that's going to be a question that we need to keep asking ourselves. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone and looked at someone coming for a session going, what on earth made you take this decision? I heard it in a dream, or my guide told me to do it. But where was your sense? And they just kind of go, but, and that doesn't help. And again, not being judgy, because I've done all this bullshit. So ultimately, you have to come back to that space that is you before you can tell apart what is real and what is not real. Just because anyone or anything claiming to be something of a higher frequency or a higher vibration or a higher this or a higher that doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't even mean that it's real. So many people thinking that they are working with the divine are actually working with its very opposite. Bet you also see this on the road. And that's why it's so important to bring your experience back to being. Notice, my hand goes here. It doesn't go here, it doesn't go to my gut, it is here. The heart is still the most powerful gateway to spirit. And as long as you can remember that, and remember that there is a need for continued discernment, and that there are pitfalls along the way that you can avoid, unless you absolutely have to experience it. As long as you remember that, you can find a smoother way through. I cannot guarantee that everything's just going to be absolutely fine. And if it was, in this day and age, I would have questions. But it comes back to presence. Now, a lot of the time, people hit a certain limit, especially when they have very strong Saturn, Pluto, Theros alignments. They hit a certain limit and they don't want to go past that limit. And rather than continuing to look for truth, they settle into a version of truth which is blocked. And from that version of truth, they can still feel very ascended, they can still feel like they're doing high-level energy work, but the image of what they get is very distorted. You cannot find a proper teacher unless that person has chosen truth over comfort. A lot of people are using spirituality as a means to find comfort, whether it's for their material life or whether it's for their ego. If you want that, go do something else. But the path that I have experienced, that I have lived through, often, moving through the eye of the needle, is that one must always choose truth, no matter how painful that truth can be. No one says you have to do it alone. As long as you're not becoming a drain on someone else, Have a support system. Be reciprocal. Draw proper boundaries and make sure you take no one for granted. But you must be committed to seeing them. One of the most painful parts for me on my journey, was looking at everything ancient that I thought I was a part of or that I wanted to be a part of again. And the more layers I started stripping away to see what was the energy beneath all of this, the more I went, oh God, I cannot have anything to do with this further. And disillusionment is also a very important part of the journey. If you have been on a spiritual path and up to this point have never felt that something you believed a while back was no longer accurate or was no longer in alignment, I will ask you, either you are God incarnate or something has gone wrong. It is okay to be wrong on the path. It is okay to make mistakes. Some people will say, it's not a mistake. Well, I can see the merit in saying that. But some roads will take you up the mountain more gently, and others will make you lose a limb. You decide which is better. But it is okay to make mistakes as long as you are willing to face them, as long as you are willing to learn. But having said that, that is probably the most powerful attitudes, you want to call them lessons, you can, but those are the most powerful points, I would say, to help you navigate. And it is important to get external perspective sometimes because we can get too caught up in ourselves. And if a situation involves beings that we love, it's very, very easy to lose sight of your own objectivity or even your best attempts of it. But just bear in mind, at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, you got to check in with here.